Hey there, this is HanDIYman 007, and in this video, I'm gonna show you how you can level up the wall of your home office from something old and gloomy like this into something modern and vibrant like this. A complete transformation that you can quickly do yourself and with absolutely no paint involved. When it comes to my surroundings, I'm someone who's very practical and often put function above form and aesthetics. But there comes a time I'm driven to my limit, especially if something distracts me from my workflow and creativity. In a previous video, I showed you how I upgraded my office setup to be more ergonomic, specifically to reduce my eye strain against my computer displays and optimize the space on my desktop. But I couldn't really reap the full benefits of that upgrade because every time my eyes wander to my periphery or look up to collect my thoughts, I am visually assaulted by this wall. And as I stare at it day after day after day, the more I realized I actually have several issues with it. Okay, I must admit it does sound silly to have issues with a wall, but let me explain. Just to be clear, the color doesn't really bother me. In fact, over the years, I have painted this wall light green, sky blue, off-white, heck, even pastel pink. What bothers me is the rough texture where dirt and dust easily cling to it, more so that this area is partially outdoor. Second is the different cladding between the left and the right side. The left side has these horizontal crevices, while the right has a relatively flat finish. As such, it doesn't feel cohesive to me. It's like I'm sitting in two different areas at the same time. Third are the glaring imperfections like huge cracks, adhesive marks, and the overall unevenness of the wall. So unless I cover everything with wall putty, no amount of paint can really hide them. Fourth is ventilation. It can get very hot in this area, which makes it difficult for me to focus and sustain my productivity. For starters, the gap in the corner lets the hot air inside the ceiling escape down into this space, and since the wall fan is mounted near it, that same hot air gets sucked in and blown directly onto my face and upper torso. Then there's the temperature of the wall itself, which can get pretty warm, because on the other side of this wall is an open space where sunlight directly hits it, and the hotter the day, the hotter the wall becomes. So as you can imagine, there are days it feels like I'm working inside an oven and cooked extra crispy. So to improve the ambiance of my work area and at the same time address all the issues I mentioned, a fresh splash of paint just won't cut it anymore. Instead, a more practical alternative I thought of is to cover the wall with a 5mm layer of 3D foam wallpaper. This is self-adhesive, has decent insulation, made of lightweight PVC material, and easy to cut with just a pair of scissors or a box cutter. It comes in various colors, sizes, and designs. What I am using has a white 3D brick wall design, which I feel will give my space a clean, modern, industrial vibe. I bought these online for 118 pesos or $2.36 per panel, and each panel has a size of 77 by 70 centimeters. After measuring the area of my wall, I calculated I'll need 5 of these. But in order for these 3D foam panels to stick properly and look cohesive side by side, I need to prepare the wall and make a few adjustments. Obviously, to conveniently access the wall, I need to disconnect my equipment and move my entire desk away from the space. This is gonna be boring. Oh, hang on, is there a smudge on my lens? Do you see it? Let me wipe this off first. Is the shot becoming clearer? Okay, good. And did you notice the entire desk gone too? Good. The next thing I address is the left side of the wall. I hope you don't have trypophobia, because aside from the horizontal scratch pattern from afar, a lot of hideous holes become more obvious from just 3 feet away. Yes, I deal with these holes every day because my office desk is literally right against this wall. And worse, some sections of this left wall is recessed half an inch deeper than the right side, so covering it directly with a foam wallpaper will obviously curve my brick wall pattern, which is not gonna be pretty to look at. So what I intend to do is cover this section with a 1/4 inch thick plywood from the top all the way to the bottom. So I measure the height and the width and plot everything on paper. On both sides, the height is 83 inches, but the width on top is half an inch longer than the bottom, so I will need to measure my cut lines carefully. Then when I later set the plywood on top of the wall, I will fasten it with screws along these spots. Okay, let's get to work. So this is my 1/4 inch thick plywood, which I got for 305 pesos or $6.12. Because I'm going to use a jigsaw to cut this, I'm going to set this on the ground with the good side facing down. Why? Watch this previous video where I unboxed and reviewed my Black & Decker jigsaw and learned how jigsaws in general are different from cutting with a regular handsaw. Going back, let's now measure and cut my required height and then required width. Since I will be covering this plywood with foam wallpaper anyway, I'm not very particular about cutting perfectly straight lines. Okay, let's dry fit this. I do spot some sections that I need to cut a little bit more, otherwise the plywood will not be flush against the recessed left wall. I also need to trim this top midsection because the iron grill is slightly bending downwards. Okay, let me trim this in 2 shakes. Now that this plywood is flush against the wall, it's now obvious a single layer isn't enough. I need to double it. Now I have 2 layers of 1/4 inch plywood with the same measurements. And just by eyeballing it, it looks like this side is very close to the level of the right wall. I won't know for sure until I fasten these snugly with screws. So how does one fasten 2 layers of plywood against a concrete wall? Well, first, we make a hole through the plywood with a drill bit for wood. Then set my drill to hammer mode and switch to a masonry drill bit. Then insert a torque screw through the hole. Find a punch that's equal to the diameter of the torque screw, like this Allen key. And hammer in the torque screw through the plywood until you feel it flush against the concrete wall behind it. Remove your punch and drill in your screw until it bites on the torque screw beneath. By the way, since I already had my drill out, I took the opportunity to move my wall fan closer to the center of the wall. One easy change in position that will give me a huge benefit, which I will elaborate later. Anyway, off camera, I had also completed drilling in the rest of my screws onto the plywood. I also had to use washers on most of them since the screw heads turned out to be almost the size of the holes I made through the wood. Now that the 2 layers of plywood are securely fastened on the left wall, we can proceed with the next phase, which is to unmount this wall fan and clean the right side of the wall. All I'm using here is water and liquid detergent. It's very critical to clean the surface thoroughly or the adhesive side of the foam wallpaper won't stick properly. Trust me on this, you'll thank me later. Might as well mop the floor too since I will be kneeling or sitting a lot down there when I get to the bottom part of the wall. Then I'll do a second pass on the wall, this time with just water, which I'll do off camera. After the wall is completely dried, I bring out a couple of the 3D foam wallpapers and figure out the most optimum way I should place and cut them. Then I start the slow and delicate process of peeling off the protective sheet and sticking them on the wall one by one. But like many DIY projects, there's always a final hitch. I discovered that the midsection of the left wall is still not leveled enough with the right. But I can't just add another whole layer of plywood because if I do, the top and bottom sections will become so much thicker than the right wall. So a workaround is to cut another piece of plywood, but this time, only big enough to cover the midsection of the left wall that needed to pop out some more. As a fastener, I apply beads of this all-purpose adhesive. Wait a second, I shouldn't be using this type of adhesive. Since I'm gonna stick wood onto wood, the most effective adhesive I should use is wood glue. So I bought this 238 milliliter bottle for 169 pesos or $3.39. I apply a liberal amount onto this piece using a zigzag pattern for maximum coverage. Now I slide this onto the midsection. And how do you clamp a piece of wood onto wood on a wall while waiting for the glue to completely dry? With nails. A lot of nails. And maybe a couple of makeshift wooden braces for good measure. Wood glue usually dries off in 30 minutes, but for maximum bonding, it takes 24 hours. Alright, time to remove these nails. By the way, these are the mounting screws for the wall fan. All I did was press the foam wallpaper hard enough for their heads to tear through the material and pop out. I needed to finish the first row of wallpaper right away and mount back my wall fan because it's getting hot in here. Now, all that's left to do is cut and stick on the rest of my brick wallpaper. After about 3 hours of measuring, cutting, and sticking, this is how everything looks like. Now let me give you a quick rundown of certain key areas. Because the wallpaper is 5mm thick, I have managed to plug the gap on the ceiling, preventing a lot of hot air from flowing down. And since I have moved the wall fan down in center, it can now suck in and blow cooler air coming from the left area. Also, it's now within arm's reach for me to conveniently turn it off or turn it back on. The thickness and insulating property of the PVC material has also drastically reduced the temperature of the entire wall. The unsightly adhesive marks here are completely hidden, and so is the rest of the wall's imperfection. I even love how the wall amplifies the soothing blue light coming from my laptop's cooling pad. It may be far from perfect, but I love how everything turned out. And this is now a much better looking wall than the one I had to endure with for so many years. Now, I can work better and not get visually distracted by what's in front of me. There are even times this wall has given me some inspiration, a constant reminder that hey, I did this. So if you are in the same boat as I was, perhaps some, if not all the pointers I shared in this video might help you. Whatever you do, don't just stare at your wall and be caught frozen with what-if ideas in your mind. Get up, roll up your sleeves, and you can do this.